Okay. Well, thank you very much, Anna, and thank you everyone for joining today, and look forward to sharing information and fielding your questions. Let me just switch my screens over. I think you should still be able to see it. So, can you still see my screen, Anna?
Looks great.
Okay, perfect. Well, again, thank you everyone for joining. We got some good information, and definitely I'm excited about the interest and looking forward to your questions at the end too. And we'll, like Anna said, we'll make our best effort to answer as many as we can, and those we can't, we'll take away and try to get back to you. So I'm here to talk about building and connecting the grid. So let's go there. Okay, so today we're going to talk about the electrical grid, just some kind of basics, and just to help make sure everyone's on the same page and we understand what we're talking about. We're going to talk about connections to SAS Power, so talk about what our interconnections are with our neighbors and what those look like, and then building toward the future. So what are we doing? What's SAS Power's plans to manage the challenges that we have today, and how can transmission help manage some of those changes? So first, let's talk about the electrical grid. So the grid simply means a networked connection. A simple analogy to our electrical grid is our provincial highways. Just like our highways and roads connect cities, towns, and villages all over the province, our transmission and distribution lines connect our generators and loads across the province as well. Cars move on a highway just like power moves on a transmission line. If one highway is closed, or the transmission line is down, then cars and power can usually take a detour to a parallel road or line in order to get to the same destination. This is one of the many benefits of a gridded system, such as which includes redundancy, so having that redundancy available. What the picture shows here up on the screen is electricity being generated at a generating station. Then the voltage is raised so that we can move that electricity more effectively over long distances via the transmission lines. These transmission lines are designed to carry that high voltage electricity long distances across our province. The transmission grid forms an interconnected network between generation stations and supply points to major urban and industrial centers. Saskatchewan has over 14,000 circuit kilometers of transmission power lines. That's more than the distance between Vancouver and St. John's and back again. The electricity is too powerful when we increase the voltage to move it those long distances. It's at too high of a voltage to be safe to use in your home. So it first enters a transformer station. Here, the high voltage electricity is reduced. That electricity is then dispersed down a series of lower voltage power lines or distribution lines across the province. The distribution system safely delivers power to residential farms, or to residents, farms, and commercial and oil field customers. The power that flows through SAS Power's grid has to be generated somewhere. The majority of this power is generated in Saskatchewan through coal, natural gas, wind, and hydro. But we can also use our grid to bring power to our system through our interconnections or our interties with our neighbors. Since this is discussion about building and connecting the grid, I wanted to discuss this in a little more detail. We currently have contracts with Manitoba Hydro to import non-emitting baseload power. This means we can rely on this supply being available to SAS Power. SAS Power has transmission connections with Manitoba, Alberta, and North Dakota. These interconnections allow both imports and exports, depending on the need of our system. Our neighbors are also interconnected with their neighbors, which means SAS Power is part of a very large power grid in North America, which I'll show on the next slide. Interties provide flexibility to import or export power to enhance our reliability and resiliency in response to conditions that can change rapidly in our system. For example, if there's an equipment failure at one of our power plants, or a storm event that damages power lines, we can use our interties and leverage them to import power for a few hours or days to avoid or reduce the length of a power outage for our customers. Similarly, if we have surplus, we can export it to our neighbors, like we did about 2 years ago when we exported 175 megawatts to Texas to help them recover following a massive winter storm that caused widespread power outages. So just an example how we can help our neighbors and our neighbors can help us through having interties available. Now this shows where Saskatchewan is in relation to the different power markets that exist around us. You can see SAS Power, our peak load is about, or our generating capacity is about 5,000 megawatts. And you can see we're connected and surrounded by other jurisdictions that have even more generating capacity. So Alberta to our west has over 16,000 megawatts. They're called the Alberta Electric System Operator, or AESO. Manitoba Hydro to our east, they've got over 5,500 megawatts of generation. And then to our south, we have the Southwest Power Pool. And you can see the geographic diversity that the Southwest Power Pool brings, in that it goes all the way from North Dakota down to the top of Texas, and has over 90,000 megawatts of installed generating capacity. And then to our, I guess, southwest would be the Mid-Continent Independent System Operator, so that's MISO, and so they have over 177,000 megawatts of generation capacity installed in their footprint. So you can see how Saskatchewan and SAS Power is part of a larger system within North America, and how the different markets are structured around us and their relative sizes to SAS Power as well. So some key benefits of interconnections. They're critical to enhancing reliability and resiliency. They allow us to move energy when we have too much, and to also bring in energy when we experience a shortfall. So it really helps with the resiliency. It provides the flexibility to import and export. So we can only import and export as much at a given time as what we have the intertie capability for. So having that capacity allows us to, we don't have to use it all the time, but when we want to use it, it's available to be used. It also supports the earliest implementation of SMRs. So adding interties can help us bridge the gap between needing to add new fossil fuel generation versus getting to the point where SMRs are going to be available. And SMRs are probably likely to be available in the early to mid 2030s. And so if we want to significantly reduce our emissions by 2030 and beyond, avoiding the need to build natural gas generation or other thermal generation is a good thing to meet those objectives, so that we're not stuck with those assets. Because once you build a gas plant or any kind of thermal generation, those projects have a 25, 30-year lifespan. And so once you build it, you have to, there's a significant investment that's made to build that. And if we can leverage transmission so that there's maybe a few years where we can import electricity to help fill the gap, and then when we add new generation, we can turn that around, and if we have too much, then we can export. It's also necessary for expanding our renewable generation in Saskatchewan. So adding more transmission is key to having more renewables. So if we want to have more wind and more solar, then we need to have larger interties, because we can't always determine, or we don't have a say when the wind blows or the sun shines or the clouds cover up that sun. So we need to have the flexibility to be able to move electricity out when we have too much, and to bring some in when we don't have enough. And also, I also want to mention that it's not just about building the infrastructure or the tie lines or the actual power lines. That's one piece of it. But at SAS Power, we're also looking at how we use them on an operational basis. So an example of one thing that we're doing differently is on the scheduling and moving of electricity. Traditionally or historically, you'd have to schedule the movement of electricity in 1 hour increments. So you'd have to our SAS Power has an energy marketer subsidiary called Northpoint, and they're the part of SAS Power that buys and sells electricity from other markets. So they would bring it in from Manitoba or sell it to SPP or Alberta and whatnot. And the rules around how you bought and sold electricity and how you scheduled the movement of it have changed within SAS Power, I think, for the better, in that historically you'd need to schedule the transmission, the flow of energy on an hourly basis. So for each hour during the day, the 24 hours during the day, they would have to nominate how much energy would flow from one place to another. And what we've done this year, just as of April 1st, is we've implemented quarter-hour scheduling. So we can schedule electricity on 15-minute intervals. So that means that we don't have to, if say the wind's blowing at 10:05 and then dies down, we don't have to wait all the time till 11 o'clock to bring in electricity or move it out. We can do it at 10:15. So we change that timing difference from in that example 55 minutes down to 10 minutes, so we can have more flexibility, so we can manage our system better and make sure that we operate in a reliable way and a cost effective way that will help keep rates competitive and whatnot. So, and again, that's the fifth point here, is it'll assist in long-term rate competitiveness, because if we have larger access to markets in other jurisdictions, we can, when the prices are low there, we can buy it and bring it in, and when prices are high, we can sell it and make a profit. So where some markets have some volatility, having more access to those markets will allow SAS Power to maximize our production and maximize the revenue or savings that we can create for the province as well. And increasing interties will also reduce our regulatory and operational load forecast and supply chain risk. So having more interties allows for more flexibility, so that if there are additional regulations with respect to emission targets or any limitations on our generating fleet, we can manage that. I guess another example of a regulatory restriction would be on our hydro units. Our hydro units are being, because of the environmental impact of the change in flows in water, especially given times when, say, sturgeon spawning and other considerations for fish and their habitat, the operation range for our hydro facilities is getting reduced. So we have less flexibility from our existing hydro units than we previously had. And so having larger interties can help increase our flexibility and help manage that regulatory risk of what if our hydro units, their operational flexibility reduces even further. Then that risk can be managed by having excess interties or having more interties to move energy. Operationally helps reduce risk. Again, as we mentioned, if there's a storm and there's lines that go down, or maybe a generation goes offline, we can bring energy in on a short-term basis to help fill that gap. And then I think a really big one that not a lot of people talk about is load forecast uncertainty. The province, Saskatchewan, has gone through a boom or a bust, and or not boom or bust, but it has gone through some high growth and at times. And so how do we manage if those times come back and or maybe we're in one right now and increase load, then having extra interties will allow us to bring that energy in. So I just want to wrap up and say that adding these interties will help SAS Power. It's because we do have a unique mix of hot and summer days, our relatively small and dispersed population. within the province is a challenge for us, and our limited interconnections are also a restriction for us. And just want to mention that Manitoba Hydro has some very large interties, over 3,000 megawatts, and they have some very strong interconnections with some of their neighbors, uh, and I think they've found a lot of benefit through that. So because of these challenges, we need to take a balanced approach when supplying power to Saskatchewan. Specifically to the grid, SAS Power is looking to maintain what we have and to get ready for the future generation that's coming with the increased renewables that we plan to add. There, for renewables that we plan to add, there's an RFP that's going to be coming out later this year for two 200 megawatt wind projects, and another RFP for two 100 megawatt wind projects. So right there, that's 600 megawatts of new renewable generation that's coming online that we're going to have to manage, and having interties are going to help us with that challenge. And then on intertie expansion, SaskPower signed a 20-year agreement with the Southwest Power Pool to our south to increase our ability to receive power from our neighbors in the United States by 650 megawatts. The agreement started in 2027, and this will help. And since SMRs aren't going to be available until, as I mentioned, after 2030, in the short term, importing from SPP will let SaskPower focus on SMRs or other baseload options in the mid-2030s without overbuilding other fossil fuel-based generation that may eventually have to be retired early. So I think it would be good to expand on this with other projects, with expand on the interties, and other projects are going to benefit from that as well. Okay, Anna, so that's the material I wanted to share. Hopefully it was informative for everybody, and I'm looking forward to getting questions.
Wonderful. Thanks, Andrew, for that presentation. That was some great visuals, a couple I hadn't seen before, so that was fun to get a bit more of the picture of that geographic map. I think was really interesting for me. So we have a number of questions that have come in, and I'll just kind of go through them. Oh, cute kids.
Oh. There you go. Thank you.
Little preview there. Okay, perfect. So trying to keep up here. I'll start with one of the first ones that came in just to get us going, because I'm sure it's a popular question, which is around kind of the predicted increase in demand for electrification for power, over the next couple decades, especially, many folks are watching as electric vehicles become more common, and federal regulation is also moving to have all the new vehicle sales being electric by 2025 for consumer vehicles. So, Andrew, could you speak to how SaskPower's grid can or is going to attempt to keep up with that demand? Given that EVs require a significant amount of power for charging, and what are kind of the anticipated grid impacts that might have?
Yeah, no, I think there are going to be impacts with electrification. I think it's the biggest question, I think, is a matter of the timing and when. I think we certainly, in our planning, we look at different scenarios around the adoption and uptake of electrification. And it's not just electric vehicles, it's large industrial customers that are looking to reduce their emissions and electrify some of their processes as well. So I think it's and then it's also going to impact the distribution system too. We didn't talk about distribution, but if we have a street where there's now the street now has all EVs on it, then that's going to impact the distribution system significantly. So we are proactively, new neighborhoods are being having transformers that are installed that can meet that need and whatnot, and then we'll have to for as more residents get electric vehicles, then we'll have to manage that through replacing and upgrading infrastructure. So as infrastructure is getting old, it's a matter of replacing it in a way that we can set ourselves up for the future, and then when we're building new stuff, to have that taken in consideration as well.
Thanks for that. Another question early on was about you shared the map sharing the different megawatts of capacity between the various provinces. And someone was asking, there was an example where, according to Alberta's electricity system operator, AESO, we were exporting about 150 megawatts according to this question, to Alberta quite frequently throughout the winter. And so this person was wondering, why might a province like Alberta, that seems to have, much more capacity and certainly greater population than us, why might they be buying power from us in the winter?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I'll try to answer this as quickly as possible. So Alberta has a market. It's not, they don't plan a system like SaskPower does, where they get a load forecast and they figure out when to add new generation. It's purely market based. So new generation is brought online by investors, and what is happening in Alberta is that they have added a lot of wind generation in Alberta, which is great. But what it has done is that when the wind blows, the electricity prices are quite low, that they'll sell, get money for. And then when the wind doesn't blow, that means the electricity prices can be inflated or go up. And so that has created, so basically Alberta is getting short on capacity, so they don't have enough dependable generation that they can reliably turn on and off. So that is leading to them having a volatile market price for their electricity, which has provided SaskPower an opportunity to send electricity to, or sell electricity to Alberta when the wind isn't blowing and when the prices are high, so that we can earn a revenue.
Perfect, thanks. Okay, lots of questions coming in. I'm trying my best to keep up, folks. We'll see where we get. So one question as well around energy or electricity storage. So someone was kind of wondering, we know there's a range of generation options and kind of backup options that SaskPower is looking at right now. And they're kind of curious, like, how would you compare electricity storage to, building interties and some of these transmission line initiatives? Like, so they're wondering, is it cheaper? Is it more reliable to go with storage versus, for example, interties or interconnections?
Yeah, no, great question. I think I think the solution to, like, we're entering things are getting more complex, and I think the solutions that we need it's not going to be one single thing that's going to be the answer. I think it's going to be a combination of many things, and I think batteries, just like interties, are going to play an important role in the future as we add more renewables. Having more ability to move energy out is a good thing, but another thing you can do with that extra energy is to store it in a battery and help smooth out those peaks and valleys of when the intermittent generation is producing. So I think for SaskPower, we have a project that is under development right now, a 20 megawatt battery outside of Regina, and I think that's going to give us some really good learning opportunities to figure out how to maximize the use of that battery and how to use it on our system and set us up for, I think there'll be future batteries as well.
Thank you. Maybe I'll just get you to give the really short answer to this, because I kind of think you covered it a bit in the presentation and a bit in your last answer. But there was a question about, just again, kind of all that curiosity around managing intermittent renewable power like wind and solar. Like, if our wind is only operating at a fraction of its capacity right now because maybe it's really, really cold or just really not windy, how do we manage that? And I know you've spoken it a bit, but can you give us maybe another couple sentences about how you manage that intermittency?
Yeah, so I think it comes down to planning ahead of time. So we do system studies and whatnot, and we plan for those events. Those, we don't build a system, we don't design a system to handle every single bad thing that could happen, but we design the system so it can handle what we think is appropriate, so that we can keep it's a balance of reliability and cost. We can't have two power lines going down everyone's street to make everyone's not experience power outages, because that wouldn't be cost effective. But what we do is evaluate on a probabilistic basis. So we take in the odds and percentages and figure out, based on industry standard and industry best practices, how much generation we have to back up those renewables, how much interties we have to back up those renewables. So we do consider all that. And then in the operational time frame, we rely on our forecast for wind, which is really important. We rely on our interties that give us the flexibility, and also rely on our existing generation to help manage that as well.
Thanks. On the interties again, so there was some curiosity about, if you could explain a bit more about our connections with Manitoba, how much more, maybe remind us how much power they're providing now, and how much more
Yep.
Is there room to increase that? So someone's wondering, like, can it be made large enough again to help, even more so with some of the
Right.
intermittency challenges? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And actually, it's really interesting on the Manitoba side. So there's about 350 megawatts of capacity we can bring in from Manitoba. We have two contracts, a 100 megawatt import contract that goes to 2040, and then another 190 megawatt import contract goes to 2052. So right there, there's 290 megawatts that are kind of firm imports that we're planning to bring in. One of the challenges is that as we bring in this non-emittent like baseload hydro, is that it's using up part of our intertie. So we've kind of lost a piece of our intertie that we could use for contingency and flexibility. They've been kind of allocated to these contracts. So I think there's a little bit of room left to increase that intertie or to add additional contracts. But one thing we want to do is we want to keep some available so that we can have that flexibility. So when we need it, we can get more if we do or we don't. Because if we load up those interties 100% of the time, then we lose that flexibility, which is a big advantage of having those interties there.
Absolutely. Okay, thanks. I'm going to ask you a question that's maybe a little bit outside the scope, but very much on
No,
people's
sounds great.
minds, and do as much as you can with it.
Yeah.
So there's some questions as well, just about there's a few different ones I'll try to tie together. So one that just came in, when will the coal plants be shut down? Well, I'll weave that in here. So certainly we're expecting, working towards this point. The deadline was 2030 under federal regulations to come off of
Yeah.
conventional coal. And so there's a couple of questions kind of around this. So one is, is it technically possible to meet, does SaskPower think it's technically possible to meet our net zero targets, kind of on the more aggressive timeline that's being discussed, like 2035, without using coal and natural gas? And then kind of on the flip side, someone else is saying, well, why are we building more fossil fueled plants knowing that they're going to be stranded assets in the long term if we're trying to get to this decarbonization goal, even more quickly than anticipated? So if you could share some comments on those
Sure.
questions, I think that would help some folks in the chat.
Yeah, no, we're definitely the industry is going through a major transition. I think we're still working on figuring out the best solution. I think it's, as I mentioned, it's going to be a combination of a bunch of different things. Renewables is going to play a big part. Batteries will play a big part. Even natural gas with CCS perhaps could play a big part. Um, all those things are going to be in combination needed to meet these aggressive targets. And will SaskPower get there? I'm hopeful that we can. We've got a lot of smart engineers and people here that are working on this on that it's their focus. And I think we're looking at leveraging information from our neighbors and other jurisdictions who have had success with integrating renewables and doing these things. And so I think we have smart people here, and there's smart people in the industry trying to figure this out. So I think it's going to be a journey, and we have some time to get there. But I think we have to start acting now to be able to set us up for success down the road.
Okay, thanks, Andrew. Let's try to power through a couple more, and then I know we have to go around 12:50 to get on to our other sessions. But two kind of connected questions about reliability. So, or maybe concerns in a way too. Folks coming in from rural or remote communities feeling like perhaps there's greater vulnerability, for folks that are on grid connected communities that are more rural or
Mhm.
remote, feeling like, is all this change and turbulence and diversity of supply options and batteries and imports, like how will that, how can I be confident that I'm still going to have my reliable power when I'm maybe a bit further away from those load centers? And
Mhm.
and then kind of related to that, someone was asking about, seeing rolling blackouts in some parts of the world, and we really need our heat for our homes in the winter. So how are we,
Absolutely.
working through those challenges?
Yeah, I think in Saskatchewan, electricity is a critical thing. We need it for, like you said, especially in wintertime. We take that very seriously at SaskPower. I think some of the things we talked about, I think Saskatchewan has benefited from having a diverse portfolio of generation sources or sources for electricity, and I think that's going to be a big part in the future as well. So when I say portfolio, I'm thinking the interties. I'm thinking even like renewable generation, distributed generation, batteries, I think there's benefit in having generation sources spread out across the province so that we're not just not putting all our eggs in one basket. And I think that that diversity is going to help with that reliability piece.
Perfect. Okay, well, thanks, Andrew. I think I'm unfortunately going to have to leave it there. We did have some more questions come in, but I think we've done a pretty good
Great,
job getting through
great,
as many as we can.
great
Yeah.
questions. Yeah.
Yeah, there's been fantastic questions. And certainly, as I said at the beginning, we really appreciate all that engagement and recognize there's a bit more here than we can tackle with the time we have. But number one, we're going to keep following up. SaskPower is committed to keep following up with more opportunities to learn and discuss these topics, especially as we understand kind of those burning questions that folks have. Again, if you have one of these questions and you've taken the time to write it out, save it and take it over even to our saskpower.com/engage website, where you can we have an ask a question feature there under our future supply planning tab. And people like Andrew and others are on the back end, and you get forwarded those questions to read and respond to. So again, sorry if we couldn't answer your specific question today, but please do share it if you can through that engagement site. Otherwise, yeah, at this point, we're going to wrap it up. We'll be moving to our next session. So the way you do that is you click the leave button at the top, but you can also just on the left-hand menu navigate back out to that sessions icon. It looks like a couple people around a table on that left-hand side menu, and go choose where you want to go next. So thanks everybody again for coming, and we'll see you in various sessions the rest of the afternoon. And thanks again, Andrew, for sharing your knowledge and experience with us.
Yeah. No, thanks everyone for the interest.
Bye.